Does anyone sitting here have any idea what he's talking about?
I'm sure Scott does. Please tell us what he's talking about.
None of us do, because none of us are in the room for these negotiations that are
Doesn't
going
seem like
on.
Trump is either.
You're not.
Trump isn't either.
You're not. And obviously they're talking.
I didn't say I didn't say that I do.
I want to hop in.
So,
Please explain.
I wanna
guess
hop in.
what? None of us are going to be. Now, we will react to it when the news breaks, but to me,
In today's video, Adam Mockler and Val Demings repeatedly laugh at Scott Jennings for his ridiculous claims on CNN. When you're talking about a conflict as serious as Iran, people expect a clear plan, a clear goal, and a clear explanation. And history shows when that's missing, things tend to spiral. The US has already spent trillions on past Middle East conflicts with outcomes that are still unclear today. On top of that, Iran isn't a conventional threat. Groups like the IRGC rely on asymmetric tactics, meaning even if you hit major targets, the real risks can still remain. But before we dive into today's video, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one.
I know we've talked here, and I think one of the responses to what you just laid out is that the Iranians have funded bad actors across the region for many decades. Many presidents in both parties have talked about how bad this regime is. But Scott, the challenge is, okay, we've done this. We seem to have underestimated their capabilities with drones, their willingness to dig in, the ways that they've attacked their allies. And now Jim Mattis is saying he can't see a good way out. Can you?
yeah, I mean, the way out, of course, is for an international coalition to secure the strait. And just in the news today is that the British Royal Navy is on its way. They've decided to engage. I think that's the clear future here, is after you decimate their military, take away their ability to make nuclear weapons, take away their ability to have a ballistic missile program, and defeat their willingness to be an exporter of terror, you have an international coalition that A, monitors these people, and B, secures the strait. And obviously, virtually every country in the world has an interest in the strait being open and secure, and that they don't have a navy or any capability at all to harass these ships going through. So I think that would be the hope. And I think what the president said is true. We have decimated their military capabilities. We've destroyed nearly all of their navy. We've destroyed nearly all of their navy. So one of the pieces here is to get the rest of the world engaged in the strait. I think they're on the way to doing it.
Do you think we won?
What's really interesting, though, is we know that it's not over, because we don't even clearly understand why we are there in the first place. The mission was never really clear. The president said 9 months ago that he obliterated Iran's capabilities to obtain a nuclear weapon. Yet he's deploying thousands of additional troops to the region. It looks like to me, remember he started off saying we were on an excursion in the Middle East. Looks like to me we're in a war and preparing for a ground war with no clear way out. And so the president says there's negotiations going on. Iran says that's not true. And so the American people, nor the troops on the ground, have a clue what the president's mission is, what the way out is. 13 people, U.S. soldiers, have already died. We need a clear mission.
Yeah, respectfully, may I ask you a question? Do you believe that Iran has been the world's largest state sponsor of terror for the last nearly 5 decades?
The president is the one, Scott, who said 9 months ago that he obliterated any capability that they had. So what is the mission now?
I'm asking you. I would like to engage in a debate.
I think the president.
I'd like to ask you. We're having a debate, so I'm asking you a question. Do you believe Iran is a state supporter?
An explanation for why it's okay to send our sons and daughters into a war, where 13 people have died. You're sending additional ones.
Nobody's yelling right now.
Because you're not prepared for this debate. Let me tell you what the objectives are.
History has shown over and over again that going into a conflict without a clearly defined objective is where things start to fall apart. Just look at Iraq and Afghanistan. What started as targeted missions turned into years-long engagements with shifting goals. According to research from the Brown University Watson Institute, those wars ended up costing trillions of dollars and thousands of lives. partly because the mission kept evolving without a clear endgame. And on the military side, the idea that destroying conventional forces equals victory doesn't really hold up when you're dealing with a country like Iran. Their strength isn't just in tanks or ships, it's in asymmetric warfare. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operates smaller, faster units, drones, and proxy groups across the region. That means even if major assets are hit, they can still disrupt shipping lanes like the Strait of Hormuz, which carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. That alone shows the threat isn't fully neutralized. Then there's the messaging problem. Public trust during wartime matters a lot more than people think. Data from the Pew Research Center consistently shows that support for military action drops when the goals aren't clearly explained or when they keep changing. And that's exactly what creates uncertainty, not just for the public but for troops and allies too. At the end of the day, this isn't about denying that Iran is a problem. It's about asking a more basic question. What's the plan? What does success actually look like? And how do we get out?
Number one, they are the world's largest state supporter and exporter of terrorism. Number two, they have a ballistic missile program, which we found out this past weekend can reach most of Europe. Number three, they lie about
Is
their
Europe
nuclear.
at the table?
They lie about
Is
their.
Europe at the table?
That
Yes.
discovery.
Why
They
was
lie-
why
they lie
wasn't
about
their-
Europe
is at the table.
included?
They lie about their- they
why
lie about-
wasn't you? Why weren't our allies
I see
included?
now. I see now
when
why
we
you don't know
made-
the objectives because
Why-
you don't stop talking long enough to listen.
Why were
Number three,
our allies
they have a navy.
included
They have a navy that
in the
harasses
war,
ships.
in the beginning,
And
in the
number-
discussion, in the strategic
and number
plan,
four,
in the
they enrich
operational
uranium
plan.
to 60%.
Why weren't they included?
Nobody else
All right,
does that.
hold on a second. We've known from the beginning that the Europeans were not included in this. I take your point. We've learned that they have additional capabilities, but also this president has struggled to tell a straight story to the American people about why it is, and his administration has, right? I mean, Marco Rubio was
So I
out
wanna
with an
hear
explanation.
you, Scott, explain why he's
Hold
struggling.
on. Marco Rubio was out with initial explanation saying, well, we thought Israel was going to act, so we needed to do it. Okay, now we have the president today saying that he is having conversations with the Iranians and that they gave him a present and that this is part of why he's encouraged by the state of the negotiations. I would like to play that moment for you, and then we'll see if we can get our conversation a little bit more on the rails around that. Watch.
They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. It was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it was a very significant prize. It was oil and gas related, and it was a very nice thing they did. But what it showed me is that we're dealing with the right people.
So does anyone sitting here have any idea what he's talking about?
I'm sure Scott does. Please tell us what he's talking about.
None of us do because none of us are in the room for these negotiations that are
Doesn't seem
going
like
on.
Trump is either.
You're not.
Trump
you're
isn't
not,
either.
You're not. And obviously they're talking.
I didn't say I didn't say that I do.
I wanna hop in.
So,
Please
and
explain.
I wanna
guess
hop
what? None of us are going to be. Now we will react to it when the news breaks. But to me,
Yes, Iran has been a problem in the region for decades. That's not really disputed, but the question isn't just what Iran is, it's whether the current approach actually makes sense based on the facts. And right now there are some clear gaps. For example, on the military side, even US defense analysts have pointed out that Iran's real strength isn't just missiles or a traditional navy. It's asymmetric warfare. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps runs fast attack boats, drones, and proxy networks that can disrupt shipping without needing a massive fleet. That's why even after major strikes, the Strait of Hormuz can still be threatened. And that's a huge deal when roughly a fifth of global oil supply passes through that route. Then there's the coalition issue. Historically, when the US has taken major military action, it's usually been backed by strong alliances. Think NATO operations or the Gulf War. But when key allies aren't fully aligned or involved from the start, it raises real questions about coordination and long-term stability. That's not politics, That's basic strategy. And the messaging, that's where things really start to fall apart. In past conflicts, administrations at least tried to present a consistent narrative to the public, but when explanations keep shifting or when statements don't clearly line up with what's happening on the ground, it creates confusion not just for Americans, but for allies and even adversaries watching closely. This isn't about pretending Iran isn't a threat. It's about asking a much more practical question. Does the current approach actually reduce that threat, or does it risk dragging things out even longer? Because without a clear, consistent plan and honest communication, it's hard to call anything a real success.
If you exit this with an Iran that has a defanged as it relates to missiles, as it relates to an aggressive navy, you take away their ability to make nuclear weapons, and you leave the remnant here unwilling to be a supporter of terrorism, that is an unequivocal win for the United States of America.
I want to show you the very careful wording Scott is using here. He's saying if that happens, which means that he disagrees with Trump's statement that it already has happened. I cannot believe you invoked an international coalition just 2 minutes ago when Trump already tried that. Trump announced 2 weeks ago he was gathering an international coalition of ships to escort countries to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Guess what? No countries answered because he spent the past year threatening to invade Greenland. So now,
matter of fact, he said he didn't need them.
I mean, he said he didn't need them. I was going to get there. Then he comes all the way back around to saying, listen, I didn't break up with her. No, sorry, she didn't break up with me. I broke up with her. I didn't need them in the first place.
You almost had it.
I almost had it.
You screwed it.
I want to ask you,
screwed it up.
Do you agree with, yes or no, do you agree with Trump that this war is won?
I agree that we have devastated their
Do you agree that
military.
we've won? He said we've won. Yes or no? It's not a hard question.
Well, I mean, if
He's
you
not
consider,
prepared.
if you
Have we won or
consider-
not?
if you consider a condition of winning destroying their military capabilities,
don't.
their missile capabilities.
We haven't. Wait, if that's true, why can't the Strait of Hormuz be opened if their military is destroyed? Wait, I want to hear.
Hold on one second. Here is the big picture question I do have here, Scott, is if it is true that we have won, why are we sending the 82nd Airborne?
Thank you.
To be prepared for what happens next.
Why is the strait not open if we've won? If
Yeah,
the
so
military
one of the elements of the discussion is presumably nuclear materials.
Yeah.
And even with bombing last June, nuclear materials don't go away for thousands of years, and that material can just be dug up and reused. So one of the, really, to me, the only reasonable basis to put our folks in Iran is to recover materials after an agreement has been achieved.
Would you support that, putting American boots on the ground to recover
After
nuclear
an agreement
material?
has been achieved to recover materials, yes.
So not as combat troops. You're
Correct.
saying under some
Correct.
sort
Would
of
you support it, Scott?
Well, we cannot exit this, in my opinion, without being able to assure the world that they do not have enriched uranium to the point of and purpose of building a nuclear weapon.
we have to go boots on the
period.
ground for
So that is what we have to exit.
Do you and Ken have a difference of opinion here? I mean, would you support using special operations force, potential paramilitary forces, or potentially regular troops to go get nuclear material if the Iranians didn't want us here, or are you wary of that as a choice?
Well, I'm wary of it, of course. Anytime you have people in harm's way, you have to be leery of it. But yeah. I guess I'm not, and none of us here are in a position to know what is the status of the conversations between us and who we're talking with in Iran. Also, what is Israel planning to do? Also, what are we hearing from our partners in the other Gulf states? I think there's a lot of variables that we're frankly not in a position to know enough to answer that question. But yes, of course, anytime American troops are in harm's way, you worry and you pray. And we have the greatest military in the world and we have the greatest troops in the world. But it would be quite dangerous. And hopefully, as Ken said, you would get to a point where they say, Uncle, come get the enriched uranium. And that would be a best case scenario.
If you look at the facts, calling something a win usually comes with clear outcomes, and we're just not seeing that yet. For example, the Strait of Hormuz is still a major pressure point. That's not some small detail. That waterway carries about 20% of the world's oil supply, and even limited disruption there can spike global energy prices almost instantly. If a country can still influence that, then its leverage isn't gone. Then there's the nuclear side of this. Experts from organizations like the International Atomic Energy Agency have repeatedly said that once uranium is enriched, you can't just bomb it it away. It can be relocated, hidden, or rebuilt around. That's why most long-term solutions historically have involved inspections and agreements, not just military action. And the coalition point matters more than people think. In past conflicts like the Gulf War, the US had broad international backing, which made operations more sustainable and legitimate globally. When allies hesitate or don't fully commit, it usually signals uncertainty about the strategy, not just politics. There's also a pattern here we've seen before. Declaring victory early doesn't always match reality. After the Iraq invasion, there was literally a mission accomplished moment, but years of conflict followed because the underlying issues weren't resolved. Military success on paper doesn't always translate to stability. At the end of the day, this isn't about denying progress, it's about being honest about what hasn't been solved yet. Because if key threats are still active, if global trade routes are still at risk, and if long-term solutions aren't clearly in place, then calling it a finished job just doesn't line up with the facts.